My name is Amelia Boutot, and I am here to talk to you today about the chemical element iron. This picture of an antique iron may come across as some comedic relief, but believe it or not, this actually is made of iron itself. Like many other things, such as golf clubs and dumbbells, these types of irons per se got their nicknames from the very thing that they are made out of. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. So, moving on to the more relevant explanation of what iron is. A way that you may describe iron, and more specifically its metal properties, is by saying it is lustrous, ductile, malleable, and despite the picture, silvery gray. These are some very common properties expected out of a metal. And although its book description is silvery gray, it can actually tend to take on a more red or black color. Iron actually only changes color when it's either reduced or oxidized. So you can see in these pictures above are some examples of oxidized iron. And in the bottom left-hand corner, that more black and reddish rock appears to be partially reduced and actually partially oxidized as well. So that is a great example of that. Moving on, iron is categorized as a transition metal on the periodic table. Now, what this means, it's kind of a metal that normally is present in small but measurable amounts in animal and plant cells, and actually tissues as well, that are all a necessary part of nutrition and physiology. And I actually looked that definition up on Wikipedia, but despite popular belief, it is not just a metal or transition metal, so to speak, but also a very important trace mineral, and I will come back to that point later on. The Latin name for iron is ferrum, which is the root of its atomic symbol Fe. Now, if you look it up in the Merriam-Webster or even the Oxford Dictionary, you will find the word ferrous. Now, ferrous means relating to or containing iron. And a little joke for you that I found: what do you call a wheel made of iron? A Ferris wheel. Very funny. So, why is it called iron and not ferrous or ferrum or ferra? The word iron actually originated from an Anglo-Saxon word, possibly derived from earlier words meaning holy metal, because it was used to make swords that were actually used during the Crusades. So, my take actually is it could also mean holy metal because, quite frankly, in my opinion, it is like a actual divine metal that keeps our blood running. But then again, we will approach that topic later on in this presentation. If we dive deeper and take a more in-depth look at the history of this incredible element, we have found that the earliest inkling of a mention of iron takes place between 1200 to 1700 BC. So, according to archaeological findings, the earliest iron artifacts were initially discovered in Egypt by the people of Hattusa, and those people are otherwise known as the Hittite people, because we know that they are initially occupied in Asia Minor into the area we now know as Turkey. This discovery, of course, occurred during their time that they occupied Egypt. And from this map, you can see where the Hittite Empire kind of goes down into Egypt and Thebes. So that is very cool. Now, these findings included weapons of war, such as spearheads and swords, to tools such as axes and chisels and various other items. The Hittites were known for being a strong army, but what made them so strong, you might ask? Well, records show that it was their iron armor and their weapons that made them tough and unlike really any other army. So, iron has a extremely hard density at room temperature, which makes it actually one of the hardest metals in the world, technically making it the fifth hardest metal on a density chart. Steel also being up there on the chart. Oddly enough, it's harder than iron, but also happens to be derived from from iron itself. So that's very cool. Steel is actually created from iron alloy when it's mixed with carbon in very high temperatures. So a lot of people don't know that, and I just think that's a very cool fact. Because iron's natural state is solid at room temperature, this means that the early warriors, such as the Hittite people, were melting iron ore consistently to forge new weapons. Iron actually has a scorching hot melting point of 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you're talking Celsius, it's 1,538 degrees Celsius. And if you thought that was hot, its boiling point actually has a 3,600 degree difference at a whopping 5,184 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, in Celsius, that's 2,862. So this means that our ancient ancestors would have needed to build extremely dependable and extremely hot smelters to melt down their battle instruments. So imagine that. So how did these ancient people discover iron? Well, we know that these people probably found iron digging in nature, as it occupies 5% of the Earth's crust. And according to study.com, the most common earth rocks to contain iron ore are these three rocks: magnetite, hematite, and greenolite. And those are the chemical equations up there for them. I won't go over those as they're already up on the presentation. But not only is iron found in Earth's igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rock, but it's actually also found in much of our food and the Earth's oceans, lakes, and rivers. Approximately 1 to 3 iron parts per billion, I think is what I read, was in our waters. So a question I would ask is, could this be because of underwater volcanoes? Like, I don't know. What we do know is that volcanoes contain magma, and magma is chemically made up of many, many minerals, including copious amounts of iron. So aside from rocks and rivers and volcanoes, iron is also found in celestial bodies, such as meteorites. Hence, when I mentioned magnetite earlier. Ancient Mesopotamians and early Egyptians lived in a prime location for meteorites. Because meteorites are more frequent to fall in the desert, historians believe that the earliest people to find iron ores, who are believed to be the Hittites, must have found them there and in that form. Now, there is some evidence that points back to that. For instance, the word for iron in the Greek language is sidero, which is the root word for siderite or siderolites, so otherwise known as the metal ore meteorites. Siderites actually make up 15% of all meteorites that fall to Earth, and siderolites make up 20% of all meteorites that fall to Earth. So both these kinds of meteorite contain lots of iron, but meteorites don't seem to be the only things containing iron from outer space. Recent studies within this past year have found that the moon is rusting. Now, you may think this is peculiar because for rust to be present, we must assume that there's a substantial presence of iron as well. The reality of it is that three things must be existent for an oxidation reaction, such as rusting, to occur, and that is oxygen and water and iron. And I mean, the chemical formula of that reaction is those three things. So that I thought was very interesting. So aside from being present on Earth and in the galaxy, the most important and interesting purpose of iron has to be that it is in our food and in our living bodies. Iron has an atomic number of 26, The atomic mass is 55.845. It has 26 electrons and protons and 30 lovely neutrons. And believe it or not, without this certain arrangement of protons and neutrons and electrons, the world would not be able to function, thrive, or survive. What I mean by that is, contrary to popular belief, iron is not just a metal, but it is also very important as a trace mineral. If you go to your local Walmart or search iron supplements on walmart.com like I did here, you will actually likely find this daily supplement, and this is because people everywhere are iron deficient and they don't know why, and it is causing an array of general health problems, and it's just because we need it so much. And the primary element in hemoglobin and myoglobin is iron. So without it, red blood cells couldn't carry oxygen to our brains or our blood to our organs and other various tissues. So it's quite frankly what keeps our bodies and our blood going. And in my opinion, this is a off topic, but because of this, I'll never hear the term blood moon the same ever again. It's just not the same. So this life supporting phenomenon is present in all living things, including plants. So in plants, iron is responsible for all chlorophyll synthesizing. This means it plays a very important role in algae and phytoplankton growth and fertilization. So what is actually made of iron? So we know that iron is made of iron. Dumbbells, golf clubs, they're all made of iron, but in short, iron is found everywhere. It's one of the most important elements in the universe. It keeps our infrastructure thriving, our cities expanding, railways rolling, roads and airports functioning. It keeps Mother Nature flourishing, and it keeps our blood pumping and bodies alive. So iron is just, it's truly amazing. So in close, I would like to share a funny joke that a lot of people have found on the internet. I'm a female, Phi equals iron, male equals man. Therefore, I'm Iron Man. And that's all I have to say today.